Yvonne kept thinking as she whispered, "Why me?" "Mrs. Copeland, are you all right?" "Yeah, I'm fine," Yvonne answered as she struggled to blink back hot tears. She had been prepared for hurt, surmising that she couldn't get through a divorce without some casualty of the heart, but she didn't know it would be this bad. The young woman had never met Yvonne, but she knew that in her worst moment, Mrs. Copeland had never done anything to be treated like this by her husband and the father of her children. Tears streamed down Yvonne's cheeks as she stared into the kind blue eyes of this unlikely bearer of bad news. "Mrs. Copeland, I could get fired for saying this to you, but you have to know that any man who treats you with such disregard is not worth your tears. I pray that the day you leave this house, you will step out on faith, trust God, and never look back." Yvonne sat down on one of the moving boxes. She put her face in her hands and sobbed. The young lady sat down and put her arm around Yvonne's shoulders. "I know you might not feel this right now, but God is on your side, and He will see you through this storm." Yvonne nodded. See her through. How many times had she heard those words in the past few months? As far as she was concerned, God seeing her through this disaster was a pretty tall order. Here she was, a well-educated, 43-year-old black woman with 2 daughters, unemployed, forced to leave a home she didn't think she'd ever be able to buy again, and crying on the shoulders of a blonde, blue-eyed white woman who looked like the worst problem she'd ever had was being a day late paying her rent, simply because she had forgotten to post a reminder on her calendar. The young lady reached into her bag and pulled out a baby blue suede Bible. She turned to the first chapter of Luke and found verse 37. "You know," she said, "it says right here that nothing is impossible with God. Not only is He going to see you through all of this, He is going to create for you cause to give a wonderful testimony about the glory of the Lord. And whenever it feels like it can't get any worse, you just remember that nothing, absolutely nothing, is impossible with our God." "Thank you," Yvonne whispered, thinking that she was experiencing one of those it can't get any worse moments right now. "I'll let myself out," the young lady said as she got up and walked to the door. By the time Yvonne's 3 days were up and February 17th, moving day, rolled up on her, Yvonne was ready to transform this season in her life into a gone are the things of the past event. She walked through the house, making sure that all of her boxes were in place, and came upon the last unsealed box, pulled back the flaps, and peered inside at the worn white satin wedding album. It was obvious that Darryl had tossed the album into the box, apparently hoping to convey that he didn't want any reminders of her in this house. "I wonder if he plans on tossing the girls in a box too," Yvonne mused. She pulled the wedding album out of the box and stared at Darryl's thin, solemn face on what was supposed to have been one of the happiest days of her life, wondering why the boy had ever formed his mouth to ask her to marry him. Even during their best times together, Darryl always found something wrong with Yvonne. Throughout their marriage, he lectured her relentlessly on what he contended was her tendency to act like a simpleton, marred even more so by her country ways and mannerisms. She stared at herself a moment, wondering why the pretty 20-something in the picture, with yards and yards of delicate lace trailing behind her, didn't have the sense to bunch up that dress and run. She couldn't help but think about the day Darryl came home and announced, "After much contemplation, relentless journaling to soothe my endless vexation with you, Tai Chi, acupuncture, and colon..."